Have you ever just looked out your window and really thought about what you're seeing? The buildings, the trees, the sky. It all seems pretty simple, right? But how does it all actually fit together? Well, today we're going to dive into that, and it all kicks off with one surprisingly personal question. The biggest light bulb moments in life, they don't usually happen in a classroom, do they? It's almost always triggered by something personal, something that happens to you that just makes you see the world in a totally new way. So let me tell you about a boy named Ravi. For him, that moment hit hard. He got back from a vacation, all excited to go to his favorite playground, this amazing place with soft grass and butterflies, only to find it was gone. Just a huge patch of dug-up dirt. And right in its place, a massive apartment building was going up. That really personal loss sparked a much, much bigger question in his mind. Then, at the very next school assembly, the principal said something that just clicked. He said, "See how our environment is changing." For Ravi, hearing that word, environment, connected everything, and it pushed him to ask his teacher a really important question. He went up to his teacher and asked, point blank, "What is our environment?" It seems like such a basic question, right? But the answer is way deeper than you'd think. So let's unpack what his teacher told him. The teacher's answer was just perfect. So simple. She said your environment is whatever you see in your surroundings. And for Ravi, it was this huge aha moment. He looked around the classroom, the school building, the desk, the open field outside the window, even his friends. He suddenly realized, wow, all of this? This is my environment. And that gets us to a really key idea. Our environment is basically a mix of two big things, stuff that nature creates and stuff that people make. This whole combination is our basic life support system. It gives us the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, and the land we live on. So let's break it down into two big buckets. In one bucket, you've got the natural world, mountains, rivers, trees, animals. And in the other bucket, you have everything that humans have built or created, the roads, the cars, the buildings, even the book you might be reading. But wait, we can get even more specific with that natural world bucket. Scientists split it into two categories. There's biotic, which is just a fancy word for all the living things like plants and animals, and then there's abiotic, which covers all the non-living parts like the land, the water, and the air. All right, so that brings us to the real heavy hitters of our natural world. There are four major domains, as they're called, and together they create our planet's entire life support system. Okay, here they are. Think of them as the four major components. You've got the lithosphere, which is basically all the land, the hydrosphere, which is all the water, the atmosphere, that's the air, and finally the biosphere, which is where all the life happens. So let's just quickly run through the first three. The lithosphere is the solid crust, the ground beneath your feet. It's where we get our forests, our farms, and where we build our homes. The hydrosphere is easy. It's all the water on the planet, from the biggest oceans to the smallest ponds. And the atmosphere? That's the thin, fragile blanket of air that surrounds our planet, protecting us from space and giving us weather. Now this is the one that ties it all together, the biosphere. It isn't some separate place. It's the magic zone where the other three, land, water, and air, all interact with each other to make life possible. It's the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, it's us. So, we have all these pieces, right? The living things, the non-living things. But how do they all actually work together? Well, that brings us to this awesome concept called an ecosystem. And Ravi was wondering the exact same thing. He asked his teacher, why are the plants and animals and even the way people live so different from place to place? Are they all connected somehow? And his teacher's answer was great. She just said, oh yes, very much so. And that connection? It's called an ecosystem. Think of it like an incredibly complex web. It's the system where all the living things in an area interact with each other and with all the non-living things like the sun, the soil, and the water. Everything is linked, constantly trading energy and materials to keep the whole system humming along. And here's the cool thing. An ecosystem doesn't have to be, the entire Amazon rainforest. Even a little pond in a park is a perfect example. You've got ducks, fish, plants, they're all interacting. But they also totally depend on the non-living stuff like the water, the sunlight, the nutrients in the mud. It's a complete little world where every single piece is connected. Okay, so now let's circle all the way back to where we started, to Ravi's playground. What happens when you throw humans into these natural systems? For most of human history, we just adapted. Early humans lived pretty simple lives, fitting into the natural world and taking what they needed.
But over time, our needs got bigger and way more complex, and we made a huge shift from adapting to our environment to actively changing it to suit us.
And you can see how the pace of that change just exploded. For thousands of years, things were slow. We learned to farm, we invented the wheel, then came trade. But then, bam, the Industrial Revolution hit, and our power to reshape the entire planet went into overdrive. Then the Information Age connected everyone, everywhere. With each huge leap, our impact on the environment just grew and grew.
So what does all of this leave us? Well, it brings us to the central challenge we all face today, and really, the main takeaway from this whole story: this search for balance.
The big lesson here, the ultimate point, is that a perfect balance is absolutely necessary. We have to figure out how to live in and use our environment in a way that's harmonious, so we don't end up wrecking the very systems that keep us alive. That's the real lesson at the heart of Robbie's story about his playground.
And that leaves us with one final question for you, the same one Ravi's teacher asked his class. If you could design your perfect environment, what would it look like? What does that ideal, harmonious balance between the natural world and the human-made world look like to you?